Uhuru Kenyatta when he decided to support Raila Odinga. And because I was supporting Uhuru and Ruto, both of them, from 2013 when I did the tyranny of numbers, Uhuru came as a surprise to me when he said that the direction now is William Ruto. I remember we had that conversation. I told him I have a problem with trying to sell Raila in central Kenya. And I said that the wave for Ruto has really peaked, and this will be quite problematic. However, I convinced him that, hey, if you could sell Ruto to central Kenya after the 2007 clashes, surely you can sell Raila to central Kenya, to the mountain. But for that to happen, you need to have two things. One, you have to get to the ground yourself. And number two, we need to use the deep state to ensure that Raila wins. Unfortunately, none of these two things quite happened. So, Uhuru is one who defected. So he defected, and after his defection from the original idea, some of us had no option because we were working for him. I was an officer at State House, and I had to go with him. But the problem is that he did not seem to have skin in the game. But before that, I need to say that I had started developing a whole strategy on how to neutralize Raila Odinga in the 2022 election. And I began very early in the day. That's when I began the conversation on dynasties versus hustlers. Because the idea there was to shift conversation from ethnicity to class. And if you have a class war, you will end up de-ethnicizing our politics. So I came up with that conversation of hustler versus dynasties, but Uhuru's argument was that this will end up hurting some of us. And I said, in any case, you will not be running for president. What's the problem with it? Let us do it and at least propel your deputy into office. But when I did that, I was actually asked to stop. At some point, I would want to reveal that my accounts were frozen 2 times because I was very itchy about this hustler versus dynasty conversation, coming from a Marxist orientation. And my accounts were frozen 2 times, and I had absolutely no choice but to toe the line. And so that's what happened. So what I called a defection was actually a return to my original idea, which is the idea of the hustler nation. And I would want to confirm that I have the biological DNA of this particular movement because I created it. No, they were personal and even company accounts, frozen by KRA and frozen by asset recovery over extremely flimsy basis. Then I was told, you have not received the memo. The memo is that we are serious, we are going the Baba way. It was not necessarily the time to make it public. Also because I wanted to protect what we had begun and completed. Actually, the reason why, or when my accounts were frozen, what had happened was that I had visited the deputy president in Karen. I went there for dinner, and it was a bilateral relationship, a meeting. It was between him and I, just the two of us. And I had gone to tell him, I'm going to support you in this election because I believe in this hustler wave that I have created. Immediately, I left his house. I received a call, and I was called into a meeting. And in a meeting, I was told, you were paid 50 million to go and support this man. I asked them to go confirm if it's true. And they came back and they said, well, it is not. Those are just people trying to create stories around this. But after that, that's when I was told, look, you either stick with what we've agreed on, and I stuck. I was called to the meeting by the owners of things. An agent was sent at a restaurant, a place called a Landmark, former Jacaranda Hotel. Yes. But these are people I was working with, agents I was working with. I will not reveal their names. I told the line, and I was very happy to support Babaman because I think he had one or two things that were going right for him. The only thing is that he was very lethargical. He was very, he believed that if Uhuru will support him, definitely he will get the presidency. And so he did not put as much effort as I thought he would. I raised that issue with him, Raila Odinga, bilaterally, one-on-one, in his current home. I went to see him, and he can confirm this. And when I told him two things. One, if Uhuru doesn't come to campaign for you in Central, you're going to lose. I told him, number two, if you're relying on the deep state to deliver this election for you, you are going to lose because the deep state is completely incompetent as currently constituted. It will not deliver this election for you. And if you trust that IBC will deliver it for you as well without any particular backroom conversations with them, they will also not deliver this election for you. I raised all these issues with him one-on-one. His response, because when in Bomas, when the elections were the voting was happening, I called him and I told him, if you allow Ruto to cross the 50% plus one mark, consider the presidency has gone. And I told him, remember, I had informed you that the deep state will not help you in this particular process. They have no skin in the game at all. He told me, say no more. I concede, it is very clear. And I think that's when he brought in a lot of his people on the floor of Bomas, because a good number of them were not there. They had already abandoned the process nationally, and Orengo was in Siaya, Gladys Wanga was doing her thing in Homa Bay. All the big guns were absent at Bomas. They had already disinformed themselves that this thing is with us. We have won it. We have the deep state. We have the historical trends. So they basically got very, very lax. And three, they were very disorganized. I've never seen a disorganized political machine as that one. No, to be honest with you, I was never an insider. I just wrote speeches occasionally for Raila, but when it came to issues of strategy and all that, I was never part of that. Remember, I was technical assistant to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
What did that entail?
Basically, I did. You see, the way government operates is that it operates in silos, and the different institutions are not speaking to each other, and whatever they are doing is not speaking to one another. So he invites me specifically to come and draw a picture of how, for instance, the Big Four is connected to the expressway. How, for instance, the Mau Mau roads are connected to the milk industry. So I was head of what he called the aggregation unit, to aggregate and to try and culture his legacy. That was my job. By the way, Uhuru Kenyatta and I spoke politics only twice for the 3 years that I was there. Even today, I still support Uhuru Kenyatta. The only thing is I do not agree with him regarding Raila Odinga. You know, the public and the private are totally different things. On Twitter, I consider myself a healer. A healer, that is, I say very provocative things, and anybody who has a problem with his wife and is unhappy because they've not been able to pay their loans can come and release their steam on me. So I give a kind of healing. The persona on Twitter is a totally different persona from who I actually am. The thinking of Raila and the thinking of Uhuru Kenyatta is exactly the same. The breeding is the same. Here is a difference. William Ruto has always been an outsider. When he was recruited by Arap Moi as a protege, he was an outsider. He came to the King's Court and he would listen to the conversations of the courtiers, but he was never really an insider. In fact, he was seen a lot of the time as a tea girl, serving tea to this bourgeoisie. Then when Kibaki came to office, he also came in through Raila during the second election, 2007. And he worked as Minister for Education and Agriculture. But he was still an outsider. In fact, he was later fired in the process. And then later, when Uhuru came in, first term he was an insider. Second term he was an outsider. And I can give you a very good example because I interacted with him at State House numerously. One of the things that used to disturb me a lot was the fact that he used to use the same washroom as the rest of us as deputy president. So you come from a meeting, for instance, you come from a Mangina grounds in Mombasa during October celebrations, and all of us are pressed and you want to go and relieve yourself, and you don't crowd in the same washroom. Whereas the rest, some few people had the privilege of using different facilities. Let me give you a good example. At State House itself, the chief of staff and the head of public service has a washroom that is red carpeted with golden taps. I used to ask myself, why wouldn't Ruto be allowed to use at least that facility instead of coming to crowd with us in the urinals? But really, he is number two. And I'm most honestly hoping that Gachagua has a facility that's a little bit different. You see, what that does is that it demeans him in the eyes of the courtiers. But when you treat him a little bit differently, even the respect is different. I mean, by outsider, I mean really outsider, you know. And that's why I'm saying, and he was also an outsider not only by the way he was treated, but he was also an outsider because of his background. And you can ask him, when I was working for Uhuru Kenyatta, in fact, there are so many times at State House you'd see William Ruto coming and you duck. You go to the next. I remember in Mombasa once seeing him and his wife somewhere out there, completely alone. Nobody wants to be around him. You're seen around him, then you're asked the question, what are you?
Is that the second or first time?
Oh, many, many times. Even
Including during the first time?
No, during first time, no. During first time, the story was completely different. In fact, we had very many meetings in the first term where Ruto would come and basically take over. Take over as in the president, of course, is the one chairing the meeting. Meeting is informal, but Ruto tells him, "Let me help you." So they really were very, very tight. But I think they were using each other. I'm not a politician. I'm a political scientist. I'm a man of thoughts, not a man of political action. So I have defected to the idea of the hustler nation, especially because I started it.
How so? Could you please speak to that?
It is an ideological situation here. What happened, I think, after KK came to power, they abandoned the whole ideology and the movement of the hustler nation that drove them into power. And I want to come in and drive it. I want to come in and structure it. What I'm saying is I have not defected to UDA. By the way, for the record, I am still a member of KANU, recruited by force by Arab Moi after the 1982 coup when I was a university student. So I have never changed membership. No, of course, in the last election, I voted for Raila Odinga. In the past, I voted for Uhuru Kenyatta. It doesn't mean that because you're a member of a party, you should vote for it. You can decide to do otherwise.
So tell us more about the defection.
The defection is not to UDA. The defection is to my friend William Ruto, and to the idea of the hustler nation. That's what I want to support, is what I want to grow, because as I've said, the end of the colonial project happened with the retirement of Uhuru Kenyatta. We are in a new dispensation right now, and this dispensation is going to be de-ethnicized, and the mode of operation has to be class. When as president?
Yes.
No, I haven't met him. But yeah, I've talked to him. We had a long conversation a few weeks ago. And it was a conversation where I was basically apologizing to him for being very rough during the election, because I was not a good person. On my tweets and my YouTube channel, we really went hard on him. So I felt it was important that I amend fences. And he was very gracious in our conversation. I always felt bad that this man was my good friend, and I was very rough on him. But anyway, all is fair in love, war, and politics. But I thought at least I owed him an apology. In fact, if Raila had won, I would still have called Ruto and told him nothing personal. This was just business. So I wanted to make amends, because at some point I will meet him, and he's also a friend to my father-in-law's family. So occasionally we have had functions, and he shows up, and you feel very sheepish. But anyway, that's the nature of politics. Of course, one of the things he did was blast me, and I took the blast very graciously, because I think I deserved it. So some kind of a lashing. Then I told him, but Excellency, if you could forgive General Ogola who had come to take away the government you have. If you could forgive him, honestly, who am I? I'm a small guy. You can deal with it. So it was basically, let me say, it was a heart-to-heart kind of conversation. I have a lot of work as a consulting house, and I don't think that the Kenya Kwanza government can afford me, to be honest. And I want this government, maybe they can, I don't know, but I have a lot of other engagements I'm doing right now. But if business opportunities open up with them, why not? I'll do them. You see, the number one, as I have said, I did not advise Azimio. I was never part of their team. The only person I spoke to bilaterally was Raila Odinga. And I went to give him counsel to tell him, look, deep state will fail you if you're relying on that. I was in the deep state in many ways, or I interacted with it in many ways, 100%. Not working against Raila, but they had no skin in the game. I remember a meeting once, and I can reveal this. The talks will collapse, my thinking.